But what people don't know is the scariest part in Kiev, and this is now, we're talking Washington, D.C., right? We're talking the capital of the country. We're talking like the Fort Knox, if you will, where the president, who the entire army of Putin's goal was to come in straight into Kiev, decapitate the government, and pretty literally, you know, and place its own government. This thing was meant to be done in 3 days max, right? Because who's going to stop this massive army from coming in? And so what happened is that when there was a pushback, he got pissed. And so all this atrocity started. But what people are now realizing is that the first second when this thing started, all around Kiev, there was so many, I don't even know how to say that word in English. There was so many Russian spy kind of like cells, especially at night. There was about 30, I think, assassination attempts on Zelensky within the first week.
I'm Allison. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Allison.
Where are you right now? Are you at home in Los Angeles?
I'm at home, yes.
Okay. So I actually want to start with the beginning of your life, because I think that your experiences would be of some curiosity to a lot of people, because I feel that those of us who were born in the United States and have only ever known the Western type of life may have a lot of misunderstanding about the East. Okay. So you grew up in Odessa, Ukraine, up to the age of 14.
Correct.
And the first, I'm assuming like the early part of your childhood, it was part of the Soviet Union. So you were under Soviet rule, which was a communist country. What was that experience like growing up like that?
Interesting. I'm 20 plus, almost 30 years in this country. No one's ever asked me that. But it is true. Yeah. And I think people think of Soviet Union like Genghis Khan Empire, so long ago. But the reality,
or Rocky IV, right?
right. Yeah. It was so long ago, but apparently it's still going on. And the war that Ukraine's involved in today is the war of, Putin trying to put USSR back together. So as someone who, my firsthand experience in the USSR is what's fresh in my mind. My school, for example, I was always part of something. There was pioneers. There was like a high school level. You're part of a you're being prepped for a communist party, right? So in USA is like the middle school, already starting there, there's a lot of pro-Soviet Union kind of education. And, historically, the way history is being taught in this former Soviet Union is also skewed kind of like that way. The Soviet Union won World War II basically single-handedly, which we all know is not the truth. It was USSR against everybody, it's not the truth, So there was some skewed moments historically that were presented. But, to be the biggest thing that was my immigration shock was, for example, and this is a true story, I didn't know what the word religion meant. I actually never heard the word religion.
So explain that. Why is that?
I never really understood, but until I immigrated to New York, the Judaism, the Jewish thing, also there's a difference between this and that. So like in USSR, what I'm realizing is it's all been like, here's what's allowed and everything else is not. And all those like, the Jewish diaspora that we're part of moving to US, I didn't really know anything about growing up in USSR. And so it was one of the things that I realized were kind of kept under some kind of a lid. In terms of, the restrictions, I haven't felt, because I was a teenager, I guess I haven't felt specifically these things. I see now, and as soon as I immigrated again to US, I saw the abundance of everything versus the the deficit of pretty much all of the same things over in USSR and where I came from. I saw that here, the opportunities, again, this is a beat up phrase, the opportunities to make it, the opportunities, but it's the reality. We immigrated, my family got up and left because of the opportunities for us. And finally, the army reserves and the way it's, you're being put on the list, the army back there was mandatory. And so my parents looked at me turning 14 at some point and kind of like, okay, he's next. And as a matter of fact, at 14, I was already put on the list, right? So it wasn't even like a 16
to be drafted at what age?
18 years old.
Okay.
But there was talk of us immigrating. And so as we were finalizing our documents, that what happened is that, all of a sudden I was in school and somebody came in and they put us on the list. And my mom started freaking out, like they're not going to let us out of the country now. So, there were all these things. And then, when I immigrated and we kind of like, I started to mature and, grow up, I realized and talk to my fellow immigrants. I realized that it wasn't all gravy. And, for example, my dad wasn't able to go to university he wanted to go to. He actually wasn't allowed into university because he was Jewish. And so he had to go to marine merchants in order to also not, fall into the army. So all of those things were not the place you wanted to raise your kids. Let's just put it that way.
But you as a kid, you didn't realize the freedoms you were lacking and how you were being indoctrinated into a certain way of thinking until you saw the contrast when you came to the United States, when you came to New York.
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah. I have to say that, it's also all about the family unit, right? We talk about the kind of parents that you can be lucky to have. I'm lucky, to have the parents that I do. And, the way they brought us up, the way they taught us to look at things. And most importantly, the way the house was maintained is that no matter what, I come home and it's our environment. This is where I'm loved. This is where we are. My brother and I were always supported. And so we never felt the restrictions that some may have felt. I felt loved. And I loved my parents and I respected them. And when they decided that we're going to move to a different country, it was my home is my parents. It's not
right. Yeah, I feel that. I know exactly what you mean. So before you moved to New York, there was a brief time when the USSR had dismantled and then Ukraine was trying to find its footing as a free and democratic nation. Right, the last few years that you were living there. So what was that transition like, being there during that time?
Yeah, I think that's the time when USSR fell apart, was it like 1889 or something? And 91, Ukraine had famously given up its nuclear, reserve or whatever it's called, arsenal. And in basically 91 was when Ukraine decided we want to play with those guys. We don't want to play with these guys anymore. We want to go to Europe. We want to be European nation. We want to be progressive. We don't, and so I think that's the day when, Russia and that mentality started to kind of brew. And what we're seeing today is the result of what started back then. Right. I think that for Putin, I think Putin came to power around 91 as well. I'm not sure. Immediately, the first order of business is eventually getting Ukraine to be back and to be under this sort of regime. So that's what we're seeing right now. The result of 91. What started there.
So you get to Brooklyn. You're 14. So it's you, your brother, and your parents.
Correct.
And you don't speak the language. How did you cope with the culture shock? And was it dance that kind of gave you something to hold on to while you were trying to integrate into American society?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's all cute and romantic, but the reality is I spoke the cha-cha. I didn't speak the English, So, right. For me, by the way, it wasn't even that amazing in cha-cha. I was just good enough for Ukraine, but I was, at the time, in mid-90s, when we came here in 94, United States danced, but, it was just coming out of social dance kind of level, right? So in terms of competitive ballroom dancing, this country wasn't really forefronts, not even close. So what we ended up being, and by we, I mean the wave of immigrants in mid 90s, me, my brother, and a few other couples that landed in Brooklyn, we started what is now ballroom dance industry in this country. And we were the first kids, we were the first youth, then we were the first couples to represent the United States on the world level. You know, you're talking about 96 German Open when, you know, my brother is second and I'm a finalist in my category. And they're reading the names. Vladimir Chmerkovskiy, you know, representing the United States, or Maksim Chmerkovskiy with our partners, like, you know, Yelena and Ina and this one. And so, you know, it was very interesting, and we were so proud. I remember that feeling. We were so proud because I didn't feel the pride for the, you know, where I was coming from. You know, the former Soviet Union, even the Ukraine. You know, today Ukraine is a romantic, you know, beautiful place that's worth supporting and protecting, right? Back then I was 14 and I was, you know, leaving the place. I felt angry, to be honest with you. I felt like that country let me go. I felt like that region let me go, you know, that they weren't holding on to me, you know.
What do you mean by that?
I mean that when I landed in Brooklyn, I was Brooklynite, you know, I was a New Yorker, you know, it was my probably first real love, you know, the city and the place and United States, and having that flag. And then, you know, this was the motivation for my brother and I to compete and represent and do better. You know, it was as much I want to win as I want to carry my American flag in a business of dance worldwide, where that flag is not prevalent at all. You know, my brother, again, is the first United States world champion in Latin back then. And, you know, and I'm a proud coach of him in that particular moment in time. And so for us to raise the American flag, that, by the way, quick tidbit, you know, my brother won junior worlds in Italy, you know, and the funny thing is that they didn't actually have an American flag to host for the first place, because it was not something that was to be expected. So it's interesting, but that's our history. You know, we landed here. We've, you know, moved on from where we come from. We weren't focused on, you know, the immigrant part of it. The questions you're not asking because we may not be privy, but there were food stamps, there was welfare government assist program. There were, you know, we were given plastic chairs. I remember there was we were a family of 4. We got, you know, furniture that was sort of like donated to us by, you know, Jewish organization or the welfare program. And I remember we got a table and 3 chairs. And I was like, that's odd. There's 4 of us, but, you know, who cares? So, you know, so we, you know, we've gone through a lot. My parents had both 2 jobs, not the jobs that you would be proud of, but, you know, talking about dishwasher and a delivery boy in pizzeria while learning English, while trying to get, you know, some kind of education going. So all those struggles are crazy, but we felt good about it. You know, we felt romantic about it. You know, it was, you know, I was a teenager going, you know, I was 14 going on 25 overnight. And it was all about supporting the family and family's decision. Here's where we are. We got to build here, and we got to do whatever it takes.
Well, you felt like you had to grow up fast.
I didn't have a choice. I landed in New York. May 29th, 1994. I was a baby. That was highly educated. I finished 9 grades in Soviet, you know, school system. So you can imagine, I was a chemistry and biology major since I was in 7th grade. So when I landed here, high school did not entice me. I went to public high school in Brooklyn, and the first day of my 10th grade, what I saw what we had to do for math, I realized that I'm 4 grades behind in terms of, like, I've done that in 5th grade. And so for me, unfortunately, education did not, you know, I felt like I was light years ahead of everybody here in high school, regardless of not having English. So
when you were over there in Ukraine, were you thinking maybe I'll be a doctor, a scientist? Like, was your head completely somewhere else when you were over there?
I think that 14, 15 is when you start having those thoughts. So I was right. I would have, if we were to stay a couple more years, and, you know, not until, you know, I would probably go through these thoughts. But at 14, I wasn't ready to think that way yet. And so when I landed here in US, first of all, I got beat up second day. So, you're talking about welcome
I was
to
going to ask that. I'm thinking,
amazing.
Russian name, doesn't speak the language.
It wasn't even about that. Half of the kids that beat me up were like fellow immigrants. So it was like a black kid, couple of Asian guys. There was Italian twins that I met a long time after that, and a Russian kid, somebody else. So like it was a United Nations welcome. It wasn't. Sure. I wasn't even upset. It was like I was upset, but it was like it is what it is. So that was there were a few moments that I feel like toughened me up, and I guess it's like what if everything was roses and butterflies. It would have been different, but my path the way it is, and I guess the overcoming of some things, it's not me patting myself on the back. It's me saying that the circumstance behind my life was such that shaped me to do this.
Absolutely.
Circumstance were easy. I would have been something different.
So now you and Val become top international competitors. Correct. And how does Dancing with the Stars find you?
I was ranked first in US and fourth in the world at that time, just sheer rankings, in terms of, placement. I was probably top 6 in the world at the moment, and, going into the final in my professional Latin career. My brother was 6 years younger, so he was still in youth, and, he didn't have aspirations of Dancing with the Stars, and neither did I. At the time that Dancing with the Stars started, first season, I remember it was a pilot season during the summertime, and the phone rang, "Hey, Dancing with the Stars." I literally hung up right away. And, there were another 10 calls that just kept hanging up. It was not my plan. It wasn't what I wanted to do. It had nothing to do with my future. My future had to do with winning the world title. And,
so you didn't see national network television as a path to making your dreams come true or success or anything like that? You just kept hanging up on them?
Not even at all, because in this country, It wasn't my passion. My passion was, again, world championships. In Germany or Europe, we've been signing autographs since I'm 17 years old. So it wasn't like I didn't need fame. I wasn't trying to go after financial, reciprocation of that sort. I was just a competitor. And how, like, if you are to, like, those thoroughbred race horses, you have the blinds on and you just see the front. That was me. And so there was a lot of us. There was most of us. Second season came around, and I unfortunately at that time I split up with my partner, and I was really in search for a partner that would inspire me to reset. I was a bit depressed. It was at that time I was 25 years old, and I danced since I was 4. I had my studio since I was 17. I had kids. And so I raised a lot of couples, and I dedicated all of my life to ballroom dancing in that genre, in that direction. I saw every, major city on every continent and in every major country. And I did not see anything of the city. I only saw ballroom, floor and kind of format. So, I realized that I haven't lived, and I've never been to LA. And so when that call came in again, I kind of said, well, why not? And I swear to God, this was why not join Dancing with the Stars. It wasn't like, yes, this is all I want to do. It was why not?
Okay.
Screw it. Let's go give it a try. My plan was to come in, do 1 season, come back, get a partner, and continue my quest. And, here we are. And my brother actually joined the show 6 years later. So we kind of did everything with 5-6 years. And, first I do, then I lay the path and the foundation, and then he follows my footsteps.
And how do you feel about fame? Because you said it's not something I was looking for. I wasn't really interested. So how do you feel about it?
I don't care about fame at all. I promise I don't care about fame. I care about, I care about my family's financial stability, right? So if I am the guy, on television, then that's my job, right? So the job is popularity and reciprocation, but a lot of people, what I realized again, 2006 or 2005, when I got to LA, and, I spent the next 10 years, 35, no less, till 32, about 33. I spent that time catching up on going out, on having a social life, on being a teenager back in the day when I wasn't, because I had a job at night, and my school time was not a teenage school time. I didn't have any social life. So I really caught up with all of that, I promise. Plus LA, with a little bit of money in my pocket for the first time in my life, being able to help my family. I never moved to LA. I kept
You were
living
flying
in New
back
York.
before.
Yeah, I would come for the show, do my job, and then go back to being what I wanted to be.
So was it like
probably in hindsight wasn't the right decision. I should have come, stayed focused, and really honed in on Dancing with the Stars. But here's my history, and so looking back, I think I did everything the Maksim way, it's I can't do it. I can't be somebody else. And so this is how I did it. But I'm grateful for the opportunity. The one thing that I noticed seeing people in LA and realizing what this industry is about is that I noticed that there were a lot of people here that just wanted to be here for the sake of being here, being famous for the sake of being famous. They had no career path. They had no, future plans. They weren't trying to, reinvent something or make their mark on the world. They were trying to just be famous. It's that Kardashian kind of, syndrome.
It's that self-serving. It's not how can I serve? It's how can the world serve me?
I'm not making everybody.
No, I get it. But
a lot of people do things for their own. A lot of people focus on them, and that's okay. I don't need everybody to serve the world. Look at me now. I'm running a nonprofit, and I'm having the most difficult time, getting people to donate, because I realize people are focused on first within, which is okay. I'm fine with that. What wasn't fine with is that in my profession, that was becoming the TV personality, that I was getting the name, I was getting sort of put under the same umbrella of everyone. Everybody's in LA is the same type. That's not true.
But did it make you feel embarrassed to be called a celebrity? Because I find that word so cringy. I find it cringy, right? It's like, ooh, yeah, no. I know what you mean. So you wanted to put the focus elsewhere.
I'm a professional dancer. It's like, it took me a second to carry that with pride. I guess I've made a career out of it, and then I made another career out of that career. So I'm very proud of being able to convert like that. Dancing with the Stars certainly is the only reason why that was possible. Having said that,
also it's how you met your wife, right?
I mean, not well, yeah. And
or did you guys meet? Or did you guys meet working in New York?
We met on Broadway, but the reality is that I would not have probably been on that Broadway production had I not been, a certain level dancer on television. And so when Peter's Broadway show, where she was one of the starring characters in, it's called Burn the Floor. And when it came to US, and it was already a popular production all over the world, Asia specifically, the countries that were ballroom friendly, because it was a ballroom-based first ever stage production that was worldwide phenom. And when it came to US, they asked me to be one of the stars, to just basically sell tickets in this country. I'm a big time dancer in this country on TV. So when Peter and I met, she wasn't really fond of me, because it was like, who is this celebrity, coming in? And now he's taking up all center stage space. And reality is I'm just there to sell tickets. But again, she saw me for who I truly am on the inside, and fell in love. I believe in first sight.
Head over heels.
She's never going to admit it.
Okay, so I want to talk about you traveled back to your home country of Ukraine to work on a television show, right?
Right.
Okay, so you're there working when Ukraine gets invaded by Putin.
Correct.
And all of a sudden you are in a war-torn country, and your wife had suffered a miscarriage back home at the same time. So it was like a shitstorm. First of all, So we all have times in life where life hits us hard, right? It's like, why is everything happening at once? Like, why am I in this valley and how do I get out? What's your advice, or what is your MO for trying to handle overwhelming emotions, fear, grief, on and on? How did you handle that time?
Shit, bad.
Yeah.
I mean, there are a lot of, I have to say, there are a lot of, like, soul searching is just these beat up phrases. I keep listening to other people's interviews and I'm like, you're saying things that are just so cliche, right? And here I am, and you're asking me this question, and I'm referring to cliche sentences like, you search from the inside, all this nonsense. Look, the reality is, I'm in Kiev. I woke up 5 a.m. My phone rings off the hook, and I keep it. I never sleep next to my phone. I put my phone in the other room, or if I'm in a hotel room, it's like on the other corner, right? Because I don't want this right here. And I also want to be, when I put an alarm, I want to get up and go turn it off. And the phone is off the hook, and I kind of keep half my eye open. I see this like pitch black. It's still early in the morning, and it might be somebody calling from US who forgot that I'm, the time zones are different, whatever. And it just keeps ringing and keeps ringing and keeps ringing. And so I got up, and it's my friend from Kiev who's like, "Hey, the war has begun. Just be calm. Pack your bags." I'm like, "What do you mean? Let's go back to the first thing you said." Like, so it was a very eerie feeling. I don't think I handled it the best. I wasn't like calm, cool, and collected, making amazing decisions. I was freaking out, but trying not to show it. I was trying to call my wife and be like, "Hey, we're good. It's all good," because I felt like I let everybody down. My entire family was telling me not to go. I was at home for Valentine's Day with Peter, and on February 20th, I was flying back to Ukraine to continue the filming, and Peter was crying. We almost missed my flight. It was just like things that were sort of trying to prevent me from going, and I might have been the only one from US flying that way. So, I felt like, on 4 days later, this is happening. What the whole world was telling me, and I was telling everyone, which is, it's fine. When this goes down, I'll be okay. Production swore to me that it's all taken care of. I'll be the first on the plane and out, right? What's going to happen? They're going to come in with some tanks. It's going to take a little bit of time before, this comes into some sort of Kiev. None of that happened. None of it. The first thing that happened was aerial attack, and all airports were shut down. And over the next couple of hours, it was clear that I'm not going anywhere, and I have no way of leaving. And if you want to leave, here's the border with Poland, and go schlep all the way, right? And so it turned into.
But here's what's scary and what people need to understand. So in a situation like this, Putin was, I think at some point, he was purposefully targeting civilian areas. It wasn't like, oh, the war is being fought over here, but the civilians are safe. Right. So that civilians are being targeted, and you're there. Right. So right. What
yeah,
is,
no, this was not this is not, and it did not start as the war, which is gonna just kind of like, be fought at the forefront. This is a war. This is straight up war. This is some, like, if you can imagine your country getting attacked, I can't even imagine if people really have that imagination at this point in time, because they feel like it's some kind of swarm coming in, war. No, it's kind of individual sort of things that happen. But when it started going in like that, it just became so scary instantly. But what people don't know is the scariest part in Kiev, and this is now, we're talking Washington, D.C., right? We're talking the capital of the country. We're talking like the Fort Knox, in, if you will, where the president, who the entire army of Putin's goal was to come in straight into Kiev, decapitate the government, and pretty literally, and place its own government. This thing was meant to be done in 3 days max, right? Because who's going to stop this massive army from coming in? And so what happened is that when there was a pushback, he got pissed, and so all this atrocity started. But what people are now realizing is that the first second when this thing started, all around Kiev, there was so many, I don't even know how to say that word in English, there was so many Russian spy kind of like cells,
Right.
especially at night. There was about 30, I think, assassination attempts on Zelensky within the first week. It was just special kind of like forces all over the city, they were trying to get to him, insurgents, whatever you call them. I don't know how to call it, but that was the scariest part, is that we weren't allowed to leave the city because both people look the same. Ukrainian and Russian look the same. So you never know who is who's working for what. And it was just, it's crazy. And it was so eerie. Right now, everything is sort of pushed to the front lines, and, that's where it's all happening, minus occasional bombing that is cowardly done from either Belarusian border or from Black Sea, just coward warfare, and so at this point, it's kind of what it is. But when it started, it was horrible. It was horrific. And, in hindsight, I was not shot at. I was not in a sort of like live combat kind of situation. So technically, what was my problem? Well, everybody in Ukraine, in Kiev, had the same issue. Everybody was like, this is the end of my life as I know it right now. And we have no idea what's going to happen next. And now 6 months later, it's still there.
And how did you make your way to the Polish border? How did you make your way across the border?
There's a trade secret as to what I was doing and for 8 days, and I'm unable to say that, how I ended up, the team of people that I ended up with, but I was fine. I was protected. I was safe. But 8 days later, no one turned out to be safe. And the area where I stayed in, which was kind of like the Switzerland where all the international news outlets were, and it was sort of like off. I don't even know how to say it. Like during the wartime, I guess these places are off limits. Like this isn't,
these makeshift embassies, kind of like a makeshift.
Sort of like, yeah. And so at some point that morning, I already made friends with, ex-military from different countries who were supporting their news teams, and we became kind of like chat buddies. And, that morning I got from 2 different sources, hey, you got to go. Like, you need to get out right now. So, my news team is leaving, and my news in the way, like, we're all relocating to Lviv. So you got to go. So I was already freaking out. And then the crew that I was with, they were like, hey, don't freak out, but I think we need to get you moving. So we're going to get you to the train station, and we're going to try to put you on a train. And I'm like, well, what's the try dependent on? And they're like, well, you're an American citizen, so you'll be basically just pushed out of the country. And so that's what ended up happening. I was shoved on a train that was going to Warsaw, and there was no schedule of trains. You just show up to train station. There was, 100,000 people with their kids and everybody, and it's mostly women and children. And, there would be an announcement on this platform, train in 20 minutes, and it's going to Lviv, or it's going to somewhere else. And that was an announcement like there's a train going to Warsaw. I was like, I'm in. And so the people that were with me just shoved me on the train, and then the doors opened, and all of the people that bomb rushed it. And so just to give you kind of like, our cart is made for 30 people. There was 10 sort of like cabins, or 3-4 people in each cabin. We had 137 people on that train. So
so you guys were packed in there.
It was so packed to where first of all, when it was starting to get packed, I realized that I'm actually just taking up way too much space. I have a backpack, and and I'm a big man, and I'm fine. So I moved myself in between the trains, and I put myself in like a little place that's between trains. And then all these people felt bad for me, so because I was just freezing in there. So I come in, warm up, somebody make me a sandwich, and then everybody went to sleep, and there became literally no space to stand because everybody's just laying down everywhere. So kind of spend the night in between the middle of the train and the train itself. And I think I haven't slept like 36 hours, maybe a little more. which I was fine with because I had that experience in the past. So I knew the body is going to be okay. And I just needed to make sure that, I keep myself calm and chill. But
were people fearful on the train about whether they would survive or, yeah.
It wasn't only that. I heard a mother, we're on the train and I'm trying to help some people bring in their stuff in. And I realized that there's no room for stuff. And I'm thinking, like, how does someone who has 2 kids, luggage, and some stuff that they threw in, how do they do it? And then as I'm thinking that, I hear this lady that's passing by and screaming someone's name. And she has like a 3-year-old or 4-year-old that she's kind of dragging behind her. And it's like, Maria, Maria. So we realized that she lost the other child. So that in this nonsense. So that was crazy. Then we saw, another mother who was right next to me, actually, who got on the train with her two kids. But in this kind of process of getting on a train, she had to dump all the stuff that she was with. So now she's here, she's got a wallet and 2 kids and nothing. So we had to collect, the milk and some formula for the baby. I mean, I have a 5-year-old and we're freaking out when, his day is not according to the plan, right? Yeah. This is just, this is so horrible. It's crazy.
I know. And it's reminding me of, because I'm Jewish as well. And I actually just read a book about a woman who was in Auschwitz when she was 4 and 5 and 6 years old. And the starvation and being on the train and everything else that she went through. And I'm thinking, I have a 13-year-old and, every 2 minutes, I'm hungry, make me something. And I'm thinking, can you imagine being a parent and your child is hungry and you have nothing to give them? And there's nothing to do.
So now imagine again, 1,000 people in Mariupol in the building that got bombed that said the word children on it, right? There was 1,000 people in there in bomb shelter, all women and kids. Imagine the kids in Azov, the steel factory, thousands of people that were inside those bomb shelters. And all over Ukraine, right? Those bomb shelters where people were, and especially now in occupied territories. I hope that everyone with kids of any kind of age had left. I really do, because it's so bad. And, I'm not worried about, I'm not talking about adults. I'm not talking about, people like that. I'm talking about children specifically and how horrific.
So I want to talk to you about your nonprofit. Okay. So it's called Baranova 27. And that is based on your street address from when you lived in Ukraine.
Yeah, Baranova 27 is where I was born. My dad was born, my brother was born. So it's the home we immigrated from.
Okay. So tell me about the nonprofit and how you guys are getting resources to refugees and how people help.
Yeah. I think, as any organization of that sort starts, it starts with the nucleus. I was the nucleus. I was the one, I got stuck, turned into national news, turned into the constant reminder. I was like the sort of poster child for what's happening. And here's one of us, right? That's there. And this is the person we trust because he's constantly on television anyway. We know him from this show here. He's not political, blah, 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 all those things. So normally I would have gotten home, hug it out, talk about this. How was it? This was terrible. Let's all help people from Ukraine. Keep it moving, right? With us, it's not, it's not us. My dad felt, my mom, my parents, my family, my brother, everybody immediately felt for me, all this, fear and so on and anxiety. But we all collectively felt for the Ukrainian person, for the people that we know, plus the fact that I was working there for the last year, basically. I was judging Dancing with the Stars on one network. And at the time of the war beginning, I was filming World of Dance as a judge on another network. So I was kind of integrated into that lifestyle and into those people. I had friends now directly from Ukraine, not Ukrainians in America. So there was a lot of association, and Baranova 27 started immediately. It took us, my dad and everyone involved, basically 4 or 5 days to kind of catch our bearings. By the time I landed back in US, we were already sending out thousands and hundreds of thousands of pounds of humanitarian aid to Ukraine. And initially, it all started with GoFundMe. We raised, I want to say, $400,000 on GoFundMe. So up to date, the way we've sent stuff over is through, things that needed to be sent immediately, we send by air. Things that we could send over time, we send by ships and containers. Currently, we still have 2 big containers on the way, but we've now shifted a little bit to trying to provide housing for displaced Ukrainians. And I don't mean refugees, because we want to try to help people stay in Ukraine. A lot of people now coming back just to help with the war efforts and everything else. And so that's our goal now is mobile homes. We call it Baranova villages, mobile homes that we buy in Turkey or local manufacturers in Ukraine, and that we put up and turn into like little settlements.
Okay, so people can go to baranova27.org and they can donate.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, we are right now we are obviously government recognized 501c3 nonprofit. We're actually a public charity, not a private charity. So we have all the credentials, if you will. We attracting corporate sponsorship. Obviously, a lot of people that donate to us don't want to be named. So I'm not in a PR game at all. I'm in a get as much done as quickly as I can kind of game. And so right now, all my efforts are to fundraise and to continue doing what we're doing.
Have you reached out to President Zelensky at all, or has he reached out to you? I
have connects to President. I do, because he comes from entertainment world. And not only that, but some 3 or 5 years ago, he actually won Dancing with the Stars Ukraine as a celebrity.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And so, so through the networks, through the association, I have some friends who are his very close friends. I've just not, I don't need that. I don't need, him and his support. And I think he doesn't need mine at the moment. He needs all of us to do what we do. If everybody, what I mean? Like, I actually don't want to bother him with yet another nonprofit. When there's a moment that I need his participation, I will reach out. Right now, I'm pretty sure he has a lot to deal with. And, the idea of nonprofits like mine is to help. It's not to be helped. It's we are the one providing help, so and I'm not doing for recognition. Neither is my dad or any of people that are involved. I just want tangible help. So when I need President Zelensky's support in order to gain something, then I will. Right now, if I have Buddha as my Baranova representative, it's not going to make any difference. Right now I just need to appeal and reach out and continue doing the work that we're doing just to get like-minded people to be a part of our organization.
Okay. I wanted to ask, well, President Zelensky is Jewish. What is the state of, it's just like weird to say, what is the state of anti-Semitism versus embracing the Jewish population in the Ukraine? What's going on with that?
I think that it's a misconception, to be honest with you. I haven't felt any of it. I realize, I understand historically. It's interesting because a lot of people in US, as soon as I came back, were like, listen, I'm Jewish, but I still want to help. And I'm like, well, what does that mean? I still want to help. Like, what was the point? And then I realized that there was a Ukrainian diaspora, historically was not very, pro-Jewish and such, so on and so forth. I have no idea who those people are and where they're from. I know the country that wants to be democratic. I know the country that wants to be, part of the world society. I know the country, so as such, it can't, it can't harvest anti-Semitism. It cannot harvest racism. It cannot harvest all of those things that belong to the old world, in my opinion. And so I would not be defending Ukraine the way I do had I felt those things. I did not feel any sort of anti-Semitism. I did not feel any sort of racism as much as it's probably everywhere else, So for me, I keep hearing these questions. It's a non-issue for me. It's non-topic at the moment. I'm not those guys. There were reports about, by the way, when I was on the train or when I was still in Ukraine, and I saw that there were reports about mistreatment of Black international students, I think from Ugandan students or something, that were trying to leave, and it was like they weren't allowed on the train. That's not true. That's just not correct. They weren't allowed on the train because they were young men, and this train was full of women and children. And initially, that's all who was prioritized. Rightfully so. You got a bunch of young kids that are okay to, unfortunately,
Yeah.
but they're okay. Let's not prioritize you, not because of your color or your skin. It was because of the age, and this, the who you represent. That was the case. That's how it felt. And that's what I witnessed. How it was reported was maybe a little bit different. So, For me today, Ukraine represents democracy. It represents a very 2022 kind of country, and I don't see any of this stuff.
What do you think the prognosis is? What do you see as the future of the country of Ukraine and the Ukrainian people?
The popular prognosis is that there's a counter-attacking measures that would lead to pushback of Russian forces as far back as the 91 territories of Ukraine, the sovereign, none of that Crimea annexed nonsense, or the Donbas region, again, nonsense. Well, because those people wanted to live in Russia. Like, they do not. They spent 8 years being under some kind of occupational regime, and Ukraine was trying to fight back its territories. So it just doesn't make sense to even say that. It's all just propaganda. What I see is that once this pushback happens and Russia is forced to negotiate, then it's going to lead to some, pause, and it's going to lead to conversation that may or may not lead to some kind of fruitful end result. Right now, what it feels like to me is this whole thing is too far gone. Right now, it feels to me that there was too much damage done by the Russian representatives, right? Because we're not supposed to say that it's all Russians, right? It's not everybody. There are people that are against this, but they can't do anything because the regime, because the FSB, because all these like secret services, like you go to prison for 10 years just for speaking against the special, whatever operation that they have. So I get it, I understand it, but I feel like it's so far past the point of return. Ukrainian person today wants zero to do with anybody Russian. And that's horrible because it's in neighboring countries, so what's going to happen now? We're going to have peace talks, and Russia is going to back up and say, okay, you know what? We tried, it didn't work. Well, let's go back to the way things were. No, the sanctions are really tightening up on Russia. The peace talks are going to lead to you go back to your place. I'm going to stay here, continue being European country that wants USA fully integrated, that wants NATO fully integrated. We both, two of us, right, as adults, if this was just us conversation, we both know it's not going to happen. We both know that somebody over there, aka Putin, is in this for the end result. So, in my opinion, the only outcome is Ukrainian win. That's the only outcome. And then there's going to be a terrible struggle for Russian Federation as its own country, because what's going to happen then is internally in Russia, the middle of Russia, the Buryatia, all those guys that are, in the front line, right? The guys that the Russian army is made out of. It's not the people that live in Moscow. It's not people that live in St. Petersburg. It's people that are in the back of the Russian Federation that we weren't even familiar with. Those are the guys that border with Mongolia and China, right? So those regions are going to be appalled. Upset is probably not the word for it, for the fact that they were the ones thrown into this whole thing. It wasn't the Russian person defending the Russian democracy, or whatever they call it. So I think that internally in Russia, there's going to be a lot of issues. I think this is a very long process. I think, in my opinion, again, I'm not instigating, but Russia needs to be put all the way back to kind of like, this needs to be a complete win. on Ukrainian and, to be honest with you, NATO and US
Well,
side.
are you disappointed at the lack of military response on the part of the US?
Lack of military response.
Yeah.
I think
So
the US is the reason why Ukraine is where it's at right now. It's the
Okay.
reason that it has the opportunity to support and defend itself.
Okay.
It's 100% reason why Ukrainian army was built in the last 8 years to withstand this onslaught, because everybody
Yeah.
saw it coming. It is the US intelligence, is the US support, is the US, let's call it what it is. It's the US money. It's the US arm, support that allowed for all these things.
Okay.
Again, adults, we realize that this is war, and a lot of things during war are not going to be just advertised. Hey, we're about to get 100, Gaubits, whatever those systems are, 155 millimeter, systems. It's just not going to happen that way. We're not going to read it on Instagram from
No, I
Zelensky.
know, but your mind goes back to World War II, where we sent in troops to liberate certain parts of Europe. And I know that we're going about it in a much different tactical manner this time around, because we don't want to trigger World War III.
I love what we're doing. I love what we're doing. Yes, a Ukrainian person in Ukraine, US, NATO, close the sky. That's just not going to happen. It's not going to happen by the international laws, by the laws that we decide that we live in this country. We can't just go in and here's all our weapons, here's all our troops. Number one. Number two, I believe that for the American person, this war, the way U.S. government is supporting it, is the best way to support it. You're supporting it with weapons and with pieces of metal. You're not throwing your personnel. You're not spending your body. So what's the worst that could, not the worst that could happen. I'm like, that's the way to support it. And again, I'm here to, not defend anybody, but I just have to say it in the way that it's supposed to be said, that United States is the number one support of Ukraine in every way, shape, or form. So, I have no problem with that. If not for that support, Ukraine would have been in a much worse place.
Okay, that makes sense. What do you think you came into this life as Maksim Chmerkovskiy to learn, and what do you think you came here to teach?
But it's a loaded question. It's a great question. Never lost for words, but it's a great question. I think that one of the phrases that I kind of learned is that you God laughs the second when you try to make plans. Right. So the last couple of years, especially for me and my family, but I'm sure for everybody and a lot of people worldwide, showed that it isn't about what you plan. It's about how you react to things that come at you every day. So that's my lesson now. First, I don't know at the end of my life what will my both lessons and things that I've been able to educate will be. But right this second, I'm here to I'm now all of a sudden those guys, who carry this banner, and regardless of where I am, everybody comes up and says, hey, Ukraine, hey, I'm with you, and so on and so forth. And so I can probably stick my head in the ground and keep it moving. But I think today that's my everyday, that's my mission, right? To continue being the best version of a husband, father, brother, son that I can be, as well as try to lead by example, I guess. That's the only way that I know how to do things. 10 years from now, if somebody talks to me about nonprofits, I'll be telling them how I did it. If you're asking me about how to dance, I'm going to tell you how I've gotten here. If you're asking me about television life, I can only bring examples that I've gone through, So I'm here to teach what are my experiences and to learn from life, I guess, and whatever it throws at me.
And what is your future with Dancing with the Stars?
Whereas my wife on it, my brother's on it, my sister-in-law is on it. I feel like, I'm going to wait until one of our kids is joining it in 20 years from now. Listen, I would, I never thought that my body would let me be considering this kind of action. But, I'm in great shape. I'm in perfect health. And, I try to stay that way for whatever comes at me. If Dancing with the Stars comes and says, we want you as a pro, and let's go back to, shake that tail feather one more time, I'm in.
Okay.
If they don't, I'm definitely shaking it in other ways and on other platforms. So, my dance, it hasn't been, I have not danced my last dance yet. Let's just put it that way. Whether it's going to be on Dancing with the Stars or somewhere else, I have no idea. Again, what is the point of making plans, right?
What's the point of making plans? Well, my last question was going to be, what do you see for the future for you, Peta, and Shai? But I could see making plans is probably not. It's probably more of a go with the flow kind of a thing, right? I'm assuming.
Yeah. No, when you throw in Shai into the mix, into the question, I'm here to be the absolute best father, husband that I can be, and he's the focal point of our focus and the absolute center of our life. And regardless of where I am and what I do, I'm all about that kid and my life with Peta. I'm hoping for more kids. She's hoping for more kids. We infamously, had a IVF that didn't work, 4 miscarriages. And, I'm just here to support her and everything that she's going through and that she's doing. And hopefully in our future is a few years without any of this association, and just bright, entertaining couple of years. I don't know. But he's about to go to school. So that's the only thing that we're focusing right now.
Yeah. Okay. So first of all, Max, thank you so much, because this was very informative, inspirational, and just absolutely lovely. And it was wonderful to meet you.
Thank you, Allison. It was great. Thank you so much for doing this, and appreciate it.
Of course.
Great questions.
Thank you. All right. Have a good one.